Welcome to the Always On podcast. I am your host, Duncan MacPherson. On this podcast, our objective is to enable and empower our audience, which are high caliber fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves, personally and professionally. On today's podcast, I had a great conversation with Peter Velardi, who is one of the founding partners at JPTD Partners, a firm dedicated to helping successful financial professionals maximize the value of their business and be prepared for that endgame. We also talked about referrals and systems, very thorough, and hopefully you enjoy it. And if you do, please like and share and tell your colleagues. And as always, if you have any ideas or topics that you'd like us to discuss in the future, just let us know. Thanks for listening. Very excited to have this conversation with Peter Velardi, who's one of the founding partners at JPTD Partners. I'm assuming you're the P in JPTD.
You assume that correctly, Duncan.
Hey, nice. Because I know Ted. I'm not sure if I know the other two, but you got a great crew.
John is the J, and the confusing one is Scott D. Giammarino. You think it would be the S, but he chose the D.
Okay, good. And phonetically, it works. No, it's great because I've known you guys for a long time. You've got a great team. Peter and the crew help financial professionals systematize their businesses, prepare for scalability, but also prepare for a sale, for some form of endgame. And as we have discovered over our years of interactions, that can come in many forms. But I'm looking forward to this, Peter. So why don't you just kick things off with a little bit of your backstory? Before you do that, though, I just want everybody to know this is my agenda for the conversation. I want to talk about systems in terms of efficiency, consistency, and plateau avoidance, number one. Then, Peter, I want to talk about the whole concept of automated business development, advocacy, client acquisition. That's a very much a sleeper concept right now. And I want to talk about how to bring that to life. And then thirdly, just the whole concept of endgame preparation and address that panoramically, both the quantitative, the measurable, but also the qualitative, the meaningful and the personal side of that. So with that, let's start with your backstory and then we'll just load in.
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. It's great to be here with you. We have incredible respect for what you all do over there. And you serve a very important role in our life because we see you as being the outfit that can prepare principals and owners of these practices for an exit, because you focus not just on growth of income and revenue, but how do you truly build valuation? And so you guys do a particularly great job. And as a result of that, it's fun coming full circle with you also, where now you're a great referral source to us, that we honor the quality of the people that you've coached in terms of who we work with. I know all this because I've been in the space for 40 plus years now. I'm a wealth and financial advisory space. I'd say half of it was as a financial advisor turned corporate leader. Most of that time was with Ameriprise Financial, as you may know, as is the case with my three other partners. In fact, John ran my West when I was a senior VP. Scott ran my East Coast, and Ted I brought down from Cleveland to run my Southeast. So we go way, way back. But my career was not unusual. It was a successful financial advisor that got turned on by leadership, decided it was really fun to scale and make more of a difference by working through others, and built a district, a division, a region, a country. The last 10 years, I was a senior VP of U.S. Advisor Group. I led anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 advisors. It was a great run. And my other passion was referrals, because like I'm sure most of us and most of the people listening to this podcast, we all began our career from the school of hard knocks. And I came from that school making thousands of cold calls and wasn't sustainable. So I just happened to bump into the best of the industry and referrals, learned a lot from him. So first half of my career was that path. It was a great ride, but When it became less entrepreneurial, I decided to go out and exercise my entrepreneurial roots, try to retire. I could have about halfway through that. And I was bored out of my mind. You can only fish and play golf and have fun so much per week. And so I went the other way. I got involved in 20 plus ventures and startups as an investor, as C-suite consultant, fortunate to have helped and witness and be part of some very good friends that took entities from a napkin to exits and participated along with them. So that was really fun. And then along the way, two things happened. One was, as I'm helping my friends do that and experiencing a piece of it, I said, I'd really like to start something myself from napkin to exit and build something that really matters and makes a difference in people's lives. And I said, what am I passionate about? And I'm super passionate about referrals, not just the concept of it and the emotions of why people refer, but how can we make it easier for people to do that across the table? So built a company that is now called Refer Me IQ. Now is an AI-based referral automation company that, in essence, solves the problem of people who don't really want to ask that should, and how do we do all the key behaviors that we wish a human could and would do, but usually don't. So software can enable all of that. And then the second thing is what we're talking about today mostly, and that's JPTD Partners. That happened out of demand for all of us. What began to happen, we had so many advisors, Duncan, that we had hired and trained that many of which went off to start their own RIAs and all hit that wall of complexity and broke through it in most cases with some help from great coaches like you and others. And then they're now starting to age out. They're in their 40s and 50s and 60s. They began coming to us saying, I hear there's a big wide world out there beyond walking down the street, selling my practice to an advisor for 2 to 3 times revenue and taking back a note for 10 years and praying that it all works out. And they learned about this new world, private equity and private capital and family office-backed super RIAs playing Pac-Man, but also developing their firms to the point that they are the final and best last stop for the right practice prepared for that. Frankly, I love where I'm at because I basically spend my days talking to principals and C-suite people of both large firms on the buy end and sell firms on the other end and provide all of my 40 years of expertise to help them make decisions on how to best not only scale to make a buck and make a difference, but scale in a way where they're ready to monetize. And when they do, provide an easy, educated, informed path to do that. So that's pretty much my world.
Yeah, excellent. I knew some of that, but not all of it. So it's good to get to know you a little bit better. I have learned a lot from your team. Candidly, I was surprised, frankly, at the depth of the science, because I look at this as the art and science, and I'm probably a little bit more art in terms of articulating value and positioning and being referable. But the things I've learned from you and Ted and the team behind the scenes around the fundamentals around EBITDA, EBOC, and all of those essential drivers to enterprise value has been incredible. And I'll just say for everybody, we've got a resource for you. If you're starting to think about whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or you don't even have a date in mind around getting out in front of the issues around staging your business and making sure the enterprise value is maximized, we've got a resource around what is your business worth, a very meaningful white paper. So if you'll go to jptdpartners.com/Pareto, you can raise your hand and get that document. And I'm sure, Peter, you'll throw in some other resources there as well. Let's get into this. Let's get into systems. Because when advisors moved away from a book of business to getting into an advisory and focusing on client experience and up and down the family tree in the form of advocacy and continuity and succession, all of that, especially growing up market where the demands of the client are higher, because a lot of these clients are business owners, professionals, executives themselves. Talk to me about your eureka moment where you realized systems were key and their impact on enterprise value. So just run with that first.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And thank you for the kind words also. And do remind me at the end some other things we can point out that are free resources for people that can help them. But yeah, I think of the context of that occurred to me after all this time, Duncan, is first to think about the growth of a business, but certainly financial advisory practice in phases. And at each phase, different things are needed. So if I were to just label these myself, this is more the art, but just more from my experience. There's probably four of them. And phase one to me is pure survival, right? People enter this business with expectations, things like, and it is as much of an art as a science, because a lot of people enter this with the idea of, I want to do this because I've got the heart of a social worker. I want to make a difference in the world, but I've got the mind of a capitalist. I want to earn a lot in how I do it. And as much as we, even when we were in leadership roles, would share the good, bad, ugly, and the lifeboat trails about the swamp you had to go through to get to the island of success and articulate that in some cases, gruesome detail, people still would jump into it. And until you're experiencing it and the amount of rejection and complexity and licenses and all the things, and then all the hats you have to wear, it's overwhelming for a lot. And really, most people initially are in survival mode. So in that stage, you're brought into it believing the opposite of systems. You're basically being taught at that stage, don't focus on all of that. All you have to do is get enough at-bats per week, see enough people while you learn this trade and deliver them value, then take really good care of your clients. So there's not really a systems approach to that initially. It's probably okay, but then the next phase they enter, once they know they're going to survive, they enter what I call the growth stage. They're not really scaling. They're not thinking scaling and building valuation. They're just thinking, I've got to get my income from 100,000 to 500,000 or 500 to 1 million. They're not thinking about systems approach, but this is the stage when they should. And what they should be articulating to themselves and their self-talk and then to their staff is, what are the minimal necessary systems I need to grow and grow in a way that I deal with the problem? And what's the problem? The problem is people have capacity for X amount of appointments per week. And if you look at the three vital statistics of activity times conversion times case size, once you max out on that first one, for most people, there's only so much you can move the other two. So the wall that advisors hit that causes them to plateau is on their growth is that they can only see or have a willingness to see a certain amount per week. And they can drive conversion up through skill and through lead generation. And they can drive case size by going up market and improving conversion. But at some point, they're going to hit that wall. At the same time in their growth curve, as they hit this wall of the ceiling of complexity, because now they have clients to serve. They've got to do marketing. They've got to get their CEs out of the way. So minimal systems they need in place. The first one is what you refer to, and it has to start there. And it's usually the last one they do. And that's a great client success model, right? It's called a lot of things, but how do I systematize my value proposition with my clients and have enough contact with them, deliver enough value and demonstrate my values, which is doing what you say, showing up on time, finishing what you start, saying please and thank you. All those are the values of being referable, but you've got to start there and get that wire, including whatever talent you need to pull that off from a staffing perspective. And what systems do you use for all the technology documentation that's required? So that has got to be the first thing at some point that they wire. Second thing, and I'm curious in your input also in each of these stages, but second would be, I still need to acquire clients to grow. So what's my client acquisition system? And for most people, they don't think about it this way, but I encourage them to, and that's, you want to think about fishing in two ponds initially. Stranger pond, which is all the prospecting, and then the relationship pond of all the relationships you've built up to this point. And what you want to do over time is, if you do this right with referrals and building networks, you won't need to ever fish in the stranger pond again if you do this pond right. So if you get this right, so of the two, get this one right. In fact, most people automate the other one, but they don't automate the relationship part. And that's the one we're going to catch the most and largest fish. So that's system 2. And then the third system is whatever you call running the business. It's the operational part. And in this growth stage, it's so critical to get those 3 in place in that phase. How does that sound in terms of the way you guys coach people, just for the,
completely aligned and just working backwards, because you covered a lot of ground there. The systems your way is what makes it all sustainable, but also competitor proofs the client and gets out in front of their evolving needs so that total client engagement is inevitable. So the advisor is not chasing new business from within. They deserve it. I was acquainted a long time ago with the origins of the word deserve. It stems from the words to serve, from service. If you want referrals, you must deserve them based on the service you provide. So I love that. But something occurred to me, because you said something that was quite enlightened. And what occurred to me is when the advisor realizes that they're no longer a hunter, they're a farmer, maintaining and nurturing what they've got, because there's so much more equity there. It occurred to me that there are some environments in this sector that don't even encourage that, because they want you to eat what you kill. They want you to just go out and acquire new clients. And so I'm wondering, the industry has matured so much from the concept of working in the business, transacting, to working on the business, but making an advisor just being mindful of making sure they're in the right environment that is conducive to that pond that you're acknowledging there is key. And then the last thing I want to say, and this goes back to what you were originally referencing in your backstory, like we always say, we want the business to serve your life. A big part of balance is have fun, but it's the work that gives the fun meaning. If it's all fun, then it loses its shine a little bit. But when you find that sweet spot, that's pretty much nirvana. To work, be productive, to be relevant, to have an impact, and earn the right to go out and have a great time in life. That's pretty powerful. So I just wanted to chime in there because you just got a lot of thoughts percolating there. Yeah, but that's a great sequence of systems that you laid out.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not surprised we're aligned with that. There's 2 things you said I thought were particularly interesting. One was the whole idea of just the principle of servitude, right? And it comes back, I think it was Deepak Chopra's book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. One was the law of giving. And in essence, this is the one that I think it takes some time and wisdom, and I think age helps with this a lot. Certain things that are not great about aging, but this is one that is. And that is, over time, you realize whatever you want in life, you have to give that. If you want money, you've got to give money. If you want love, you got to give love. And as soon as that button clicks or that light bulb comes on in people, that's when things really start to happen. So you had said that, and it's so true. And it's also true that certain environments emphasize one or the other. And just like it's nirvana when you personally, as a professional or as a human, get to the place in life where you figure out a way to have your cake and eat it too, that's great. But what's great is if you can find a firm that actually has found the art of having it all for you as a menu that you can tap into. And that's one of the greatest things that's happened over the last, in particular, 5 years. We work with 85 acquisition partners. And there's some of them that are just unbelievable now because they've built out all of the capacity and capabilities to do all of that. So you plug into them, and whichever one of those systems you need, or put another way, if you've got 2 out of 3, but you need the third, they'll have that third completely wired and built out for you. You can just plug into it. And so selecting a firm is as much an art of alignment of culture and values and what do they have that I need? But we're just on phase 2, which is growth. So you go from survival to growth. Now, usually happens, and I'd say the scoping of this to give people an idea of where might you fit in as you're listening to this podcast It's growth. You're now somewhere between, say, a $500,000 of rev and maybe 2 million of rev, somewhere in that range, maybe between 100 million and 500 million of AUM. And now you're seeing what's possible. You're starting to get a taste of, you're starting to make some money. You're probably doing way too many things you don't want to do, but you're starting to say, hey, I've got something here. And I really don't just want to grow and sell, which is what a percentage do. I'd like to scale this thing. I'd like to build, maybe own a state, maybe own a region, maybe grow nationally. I want to scale this thing. Maybe I think about franchise type of a thing. And so when you think scaling, now you have to add a whole new way of thinking, because what got you to that point is not necessarily what's going to get you to that. So systems are there. Now you've got to have a system around talent acquisition and development. You got to be thinking about G1s versus G2s versus staff versus specialists. You've got to think about that. You've got to think about strategic systems. How do I even block off time and get the right people in my life to think about strategies? Because there's organic growth strategies to scale. There's inorganic. Do I need to build out an M&A department? Do I need to find a firm to help me do that? So the way I think about that scaling stage is you need all the basics of the growth stage, but now you need strategic systems in place as well. One of the ones that if you haven't done it yet, you've got to do is you've got to get an automated referral system at that point in time, because by now, one of the things you're trying to scale is I've got all these peeps. I've got the clients. I've got this network after 20 years in the space. I've got all these prospects that I've been nurturing, but haven't become clients. How do you keep track of all that? How do you make sure that you do three things? Stay in contact with all those people enough, add value systematically to them so it becomes predictable. And then how do I, at the same time, show them that I do what I say and deliver what I say I deliver, and show them social proof of doing that? So scaling, you need a whole, and part of the systems in scaling is branding, because it starts to matter. It doesn't matter as much in the growth stage, but if you want to go big or go home, you've got to have a brand. You've got to have it mean something, a set of behaviors and values. And then the last stage is the monetization. And that's where we catch companies, is somewhere in the scaling, when they want to scale or grow a lot more, and then they want to then take some chips off the table. And for that world, the big mistake people make is that world, the whole M&A world, requires a totally different skill set than what most advisors have, Duncan. And you've seen this. They can even get to the scaling, but when it comes time for who do I date? How do I know who to date? What do I even do while I date them? What are the do's and don'ts? What is a good deal? What is my valuation? The old world of go to one of the outfits and do a business valuation. We laugh when a company says, when do we do the business valuation? And we tell them, when we create a market for your practice, because we get you 3 to 5 offers, then we'll know what it's worth. Then and only that. And it's usually 1.5 to 2 times the valuation that they thought they were at. And we always ask the question with the client is, what do you think it's worth? Whatever they tell us, more often than not, it's worth more, not less. In some cases, a lot more, especially when you add the equity element. So that's the way I kind of view systems. I think it's phase-based. I think the more you move up in the food chain, the more strategic systems you need, the more you've got to put more chips down on relationships and less, because it is a massive time suck, and the sand continuously moves when you're doing all forms of stranger type marketing, because filters change. Email was the lowest cost, highest, most productive way to market to strangers for years. Now it's not, because the response of all the email firms was, no, we want you to use us. So we're going to put all these filters in here, and it's going to be harder to get through and get the ROI. So those are at least my high level thoughts.
Yeah, it's definitely evolving and more rapidly now with AI. So let's, again, a lot to unpack there. I do want to drill down into the Endgame elements.
If this podcast resonates with you, then you're likely the kind of advisor who strives to be indispensable to high net worth families. In partnership with Pareto Systems and the Institute for Preparing Heirs, we're offering exclusive live training to become the most trusted advisor for high net worth families. The Great Wealth Transfer Program equips you with the training and tools to secure and enhance multi-generational relationships. It's about becoming not just an advisor, but the most trusted advisor. Join us for the live training. Visit paretosystems.com/IPH to learn more and register today. Info can also be found in the description of this podcast. Again, that's paretosystems.com/IPH. Position yourself as the trusted advisor for generations to come.
Have you ever felt like you're alone on a desert island? You know, alone, with your challenges, and wishing you had a group of successful advisors to share ideas with, solve problems together, and push each other to reach bigger outcomes? Well, you don't have to be alone. Hi, I'm Scott Hamilton, a Pareto coach, and I also lead the mastermind groups for Pareto Systems. Our goal? To help advisors achieve bigger, better futures faster than they could on their own. Through our mastermind format, what we call collective genius, we bring together successful advisors to share best practices, insights, and solve problems together. Some of our groups also are focused on specific niches, like divorce or M&A. All groups are led by Pareto coaches who've worked with hundreds of top-tier financial advisors. Ready for more? Visit ParetoMastermind.com for details and to check out our upcoming webinars. That's ParetoMastermind.com. Bigger, better, faster.
I'll tell you something, back to the beginning of your comment there, I've made it a pretty significant study around the somewhat cosmic, qualitative concept of the law of attraction and the law of reciprocity. It's a real thing. There has to be outcome detachment on it. You can't expect it in terms of when it's going to click and get traction, but it's a real thing. And part of it, it's interesting. The last consultations I've had in the last number of weeks at such a high level, so many advisors are talking about what the next 5 to 10 years is going to look like for them. We're mapping it out. And it's funny, like so many of these advisors, they care like so hard, like it's they're so honorable. But the concept of servitude, I just remind them, I say, whose expense is their success coming at? Is it coming at your expense at all? Are there things that you're starting to dread? Are you falling into that sort of no good deed goes unpunished category to the point where you're almost self-sacrificing? You're trying so hard that now it's adversely impacting your life. And that's sometimes the power of having another set of eyes, a coach to just come in and respectfully say, look, I want you to embrace the concept of self-interest where you're saying to the world, you're saying to the clients, your team, I'll take care of me for you. I'm going to try my hardest, but I'm also going to take impeccable care of myself in the process. And what's interesting about this is I wish I had a buck for every time I've had a conversation with an advisor who's said to me, I want to be out in 12 months. I want to be out in 3 years. And we get into it. Scenario planning, strategic planning, situational. We get into the weeds. And I start to realize some of the things that are lacking. Like they're aspiring, I want to spend more time with my family. I want to travel more. I want to take better care of myself. I want to play pickleball or whatever the case may be. And we engineer through systems and procedures a more efficient, consistent business. The byproduct of that is the advisor's rejuvenated. Now they're like, okay, I'm not majoring in minor things. I'm not doing the things I dread anymore. I had an advisor yesterday call me up ecstatic because he's hiring. He goes, I'm hiring a COO. Like he's getting so immersed in the C-suite He's elevating himself to ambassador level. He's on the verge of only doing the things he wants. Now, I told him, Peter, the value of your business is going through the roof, but have you ever had more fun in the meantime? I'm in an incredible sweet spot here. So there's so many ripples that come out of working on the business. And you begin with the end in mind. You say, okay, every investment of effort I'm making here is contributing to my enterprise value. But in the meantime, I might grow down to a partial book sale. I might allocate some clients to a protege, whatever the case may be. I might even become franchise ready and go out and acquire another business, but making sure it's done on your terms. That's very fulfilling, I'm sure, for you as it is for us. But here's the thing. I want to get to the automation of referrals because there's a no man's land there of reluctance. Advisors are reluctant to ask, to talk about it, to even go there, let alone the whole concept of automation, because I think the knee-jerk reaction is the interpretation is this is going to disrupt my relationship. So let's back into this. So
Sure.
we're spending a lot of time with advisors. We're saying, let's see your value through the lens of your clients. Okay, so let's have an automated process just to get their reviews, their feedback. Let them tell your story. So that's moving, and that's been powerful, rejuvenating for the team, validating for the clients. That's a step. The next step is fully embracing this concept of client testimonials, getting their perspective, letting them tell the story. Their persuasive impact is incredible. That's becoming now an automated process for a lot of advisors. All of this creates a climate of advocacy. So now what I'd like you to talk about is what does it look like to automate the concept of converting referability into actual referrals without looking needy, without chasing, without looking opportunistic, like, hey, I'm trying to grow my business. If you could help me out, just positioning it properly. How do we continue that and actually convert to get a higher quality and quantity of referrals using what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a super powerful question. And to support what you just said, the context of it all, Duncan, is that the end game for an advisor is really two things. One is to achieve their highest and best use, which is what you're saying, because when you do that, there's not just tremendous joy and satisfaction, but the business grows faster. And then the second thing, when we're talking about any form of AI or automation, the second thing is to have the business depend at the same time less on you as the principal, so it's worth more to somebody else, right? So at the end of the day, forms of automation not just produce more predictable results along the way and more ROI, but it creates a more valuable enterprise at the same time. But that is the context. Here's what I am fascinated with. So there's a chasm we're trying to close here with referrals. On the one end, let's talk about consumers. 91% of consumers would refer a financial advisor if they asked. Guess what percentage ask? Less than 10%. So wait a minute, how could that be? 91% of consumers would refer if asked. 10% actually ask. What's going on there? Why are they asking, right? And it's for all the reasons you just said. So I won't go through what goes through people's minds, limiting beliefs, poor skills, lack of emotional competence, lack of courage, peer pressure, you name it. We've got all sorts of hangups as a trade, right? But 91%. The number one way a consumer wants to learn about a financial advisor, number one way is what? Through a referral from a trusted friend or colleague. And what's changed though is technology, because the top two ways people refer today, number one by far is through email, and number two, pretty far behind it, is text, and right behind that is face-to-face. So today people use technology to refer, but it's a very high friction event, right? If I want to refer you to Tyler, it may take me 20 minutes to do it right. I have to get each of your email addresses. Hey, you know what, Duncan? Meet Tyler. Tyler's a great guy. Duncan's a great guy. This is what Duncan does. This is what Tyler does. This is why I want you guys to meet, and I'm here to help as you want. I've got to write that. I've got to proof it, I've got to send it. That's one referral. If I want to refer 5 people, it may take me an hour. So the thought of doing that sometimes prevents me from doing it because I don't have that time, right? So you got all these clients over here. And the last thing about clients and consumers, most people don't understand. This is the art of referrals. Why do people refer? It's not because somebody's going to give them a $100 Amazon gift card, although incentives increase referrals by 50%. It's not that. It's because when we refer people, we feel good. Why do we feel good? Because we fulfill the most fundamental thing as to why we're on this earth, and that's to make a difference, to matter, to help somebody, right? At the end of the day, people don't put, I've got all these toys on my gravestone. In some way, they want somebody at the funeral to say, this person mattered in my life in this way, right? So we know this because we all refer now. We refer people to a good doctor or dentist or restaurant. When they come back and say, oh man, this person really helped me, or this restaurant was great. I had a phenomenal family, joyous occasion, right? So here you have these consumers that have these emotions and things they want to unleash. They want to refer. They do refer, and they're ready to refer. Then on this end, you get all these financial advisors thinking everything but that. So the guy that I met, for example, the way he told me to do this, he said, Peter, it's not complicated. You just need 3 things: mindset, skills, and a little bit of courage. So the mindset, he goes, my mindset is real simple. If I am not phenomenal at making you, Duncan, as my client, super comfortable referring people you care about, I'm doing you a disservice and I am letting them down. Because that means they're not going to meet me and they may have to work with somebody who does not have their best interest in mind. So I am therefore morally obligated to ask you for referrals because I'm not going to give you what you truly want, which is to matter in this world. Wow, that's pretty compelling. So once I saw examples of that, then it's really, what's your system to then do all that? So the problem we're trying to solve is twofold. One is you've got a financial advisor that has all these hangups, has this gold under their hill. You know, the Aesop fable where the guy goes around the world trying to find gold, knocks on doors, comes home exhausted, walks down to his basement, and the gold's there, right? We all have this gold under our homes. You don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to spend anything. But what we need to do is have a system to get that gold out of the basement because it's all right there. And the gold for us is years of relationships, COIs, friends, relatives, clients, contacts, people you've been nurturing but haven't converted. So the landscape is that. So when we built Refer Me IQ, what I said was, there's not just one problem, which is how do you get that person to either change behavior or instead take a system off the shelf to do 90% of what I want them to do off the shelf. But the second problem was I reflect back to my days in Ameriprise. Man, we spend millions on leadership training around referrals, advisor training. I spoke at conferences. We had no way to track the impact of the spend because we didn't track anything that came out of that. There's no system. All we had was a bunch of scripts that we drilled into people. And so it didn't work. It didn't work from a scale perspective. My people of my 5,000, if 20% of them did what I said, they lived vastly improved lives because they made almost no calls. Everything they were doing was referrals. And they picked up that second layer. The first layer we all get, if you're highly referable, is you'll get some reactive referrals. People refer you and you don't have to ask. It won't be enough to scale them. And the second half is all the referrals you would get if you automated some outreach to them. So that's the problem with solving. Problem 2 is how do we help a leader of an organization, of a big RIA? How do we help them scale a referral program within their organization? If they can do it, it would save them a ton of money, right? Because they don't have to do all that other stuff. This is all they do. So I spend my time with C-suite people doing that. So here's the kind of cut to the chase answer to your question. So what really has to happen here? And there's only 3 steps. Step 1, to your introduction, a firm or an advisor needs to be referable. That's not hard, but most people don't do it or as much as they could. And incidentally, as a resource, I'll tell you one resource. If you don't know if you're referable or not, go on our website, refermeiq.com, go up to the resource center and look for the quiz, the referability quiz. The quiz up there, it's free. You can go in there, 10 questions, take you two minutes, and you're going to get a score. And you'll be able to see, how am I referable? How referable am I? And then we'd be happy to help you if you need some help. But it's a great kind of way to just test how referable you are. But that's the first step. To get referable, you have to be in contact enough with people. And incidentally, this is like praise, where if you contacted people twice as much, it would still be half of what they need. So that's part one. Part two is to deliver value. Lots of ways of delivering value, including listening, including asking strategic questions, including solving, including introducing them to resources. Lots of ways. But if you don't add value, you're not going to be referable. And the third is the art piece. That's the piece of you've got to demonstrate your values. You can't say you deliver. You've got to show up on time, all the things we discussed. Once a firm is referable, then you see all these layers of relationships that they have. You multiply that times 500 advisors, and that's a lot of gold to mine, right? The problem we all have is we don't have a system to stay in touch with them. We don't have a system to nurture them, and we don't have a system to create a path. So basically, we created AI-based software that does all of that for somebody off the shelf. So our system is email and text-based, for example, and all you do is you load all your contacts into it with a push of buttons from your CRM, your clients, your network, referrals you haven't converted, warm leads, prospects, COIs. You can upload your LinkedIn network in there and subdivide those. You get them in there, and then we've got templated emails and text things that are customized for a market and for a segment. So you can segment your clients, ABC, SMB, ultra high net worth, whatever it is. And we've got campaigns off the shelf that you can use that we've proven, and we've got AI built in there if you want to create your own. So net software is a beautiful thing because you can design software to do whatever you want. It just takes time and money. So we created software that says, let's create an authentic, personal way of communicating more often with your contacts, deliver value to them, and then create an easy path. With our system, if a client comes up and they refer somebody, all they have to do is put their first name, last name, and email address, for example, and an email will go from the client to their referral, not you, properly introducing you the way we try to train people to do, but they couldn't do. Sends thank you notes out. They go into a referral bucket, get dripped on to convert. So if you're the laziest advisor out there and the worst of referrals ever, you'll get and convert referrals in their system because we'll do it for you. And then the last thing I'll say, because you mentioned it up front, is this then when you have a system and you talk about positioning, and you're right on the money, Duncan, how you position referrals is everything. What we find with a system, whether it's ours or anybody else's, is it's so much easier to ask when you defer to the system. So we train everybody who uses our software what to do and when to do it. When we tell them, position Refer Me IQ as part of your ongoing client success model. So you become my new client. Duncan, I'm so excited to be working with you. Here's what you can expect from our relationship and my deliverable. We'll talk at least 4 times per year. We'll do 2 Zooms, 2 face-to-face, and I'm looking forward to here's what we're going to do. Also, I'll be in touch with you about every 2 weeks with an email. I've got a great system. What I'll also do from time to time is put links to things I think might interest, inform, and educate you and help you make good choices. In addition, I tell you what's going to happen. People are going to pop into your head that you care about, that you're going to want me to talk to. When that happens, we make it super easy. All you do is push a button, you put their first name, last name, and email address, and the system will take care of the introduction and everything else. And oh, by the way, just as a token, if any of those people become a client, you'll get a $100 gift card or no incentive, whatever you want. So just expect that. I'd love your input too on what I send you. If you want something else, let me know. But I just thought I'd do that. That's it. And so it's not this big, heavy thing. The problem that you refer to is that when people don't know how to do this and they don't have a system, it deteriorates into this awkward exchange that nobody likes and gives kind of referral prospecting a bad name.
People can feel the body language and the reluctance, the hesitation. Maybe it's forcing the issue, pressing a little bit, and it just collapses. And then, of course, the advisor's like, that was terrible. I'll never do that again.
So true. So painful, isn't it?
What's interesting, some of the most sophisticated self-made clients understand process and systems. As soon as you start pointing to the system, especially when you propel it with, we want to stay in contact with you, and part of the contact will sync up with the fact that if you happen to have a conversation with somebody or somebody pops into your head, you feel compelled to introduce to us. It's pretty well self-explanatory. Like just pointing to the system actually reflects well on you that you're running a business like a business. That actually contributes to referability. It's interesting, the AI piece. When I drill down with an advisor, like, why don't you get referrals? You are referable, but you don't get referrals. Why don't you get referrals? And they say, I don't ask. And I'm like, why don't you ask? It just doesn't feel right. I don't want to beg or look needy. Okay, fair enough. So then I ask them, are you referable? And they'll say, yes. Do you feel that potentially you've got clients that are on the verge of feeling they're doing a disservice if they don't introduce someone to you? They're like, I'd like to think so. And this is what I say to them. I say, okay, jump onto ChatGPT and pretend you're a friend of a client. Pretend you're a prospective client. Just type in, I'm an affluent business owner. I'm looking for a new financial advisor. What should I look for? See what comes up. Okay. Now, what questions should I ask when I meet with a financial advisor? The advisor flips the script and they stop thinking about their perception and start thinking about the perspective of the other person. This is what activates. I'm not chasing you. I'm trying to see if there's an alignment of interest and a good fit. It activates a different type of energy that I think is more pure and more authentic and contributes to that referability. And the last thing I'll say on this is all roads lead, like the who and the how is important. The process and the person are very important. Like you got to make sure you're referable to the right people. Perhaps you only talk to your ideal clients about this so that they'll introduce people like themselves. But nothing will supersede the why.
That's right.
Why should somebody refer someone to you? And why do you even make yourself available to speak to a friend? I think when that's clearly defined and it's actually rooted in somebody's sense of purpose, there's a self-fulfilling energy that comes out of that. So there's a lot there, of course, but when it all converges, something powerful happens.
Yeah, you're so right. I could tell at some point you and I should probably do a 3-hour Rogan-esque type podcast because there's so many threads in what we're both saying that we could flush out way more for your audience if we had more time. But net, the one thing I do want to go back to before we get to the end game is the concept of it is not wrong to want to work on yourself first, to be the best resource for others. One thing I've learned over time is I've structured my life like a Venn diagram where I'm in the middle of 3 circles. And really what I've learned is life is really all about the yin and yang of optimization. And it's about it's what do you optimize? How do you optimize it? And who do you optimize it with? But the 3 for me have been pretty consistent for quite some time now. Probably weren't the same 3 20 ago, but certainly less, 10 years plus. Mine are my personal health and fitness. Second is relationships. And third are my businesses. And I'm always asking myself, what am I doing to optimize all 3? Because if we don't have the energy, it's like the plane when the masts come down. What do they say? Put it on yourself first to equip yourself to save others. And what I've learned is that's life. That's life. You've got to take care of yourself. You're a fit guy, I can tell. And I don't do it to look good. I do it to feel good. But more importantly, I do it to optimize my own energy for the sole purpose of contribution, knowing the more I contribute, the more lives I change, my life gets great and has been great for quite some time. And I've got lots of great relationships, and I'm constantly saying, how do I stay in touch with them? How do I get together? How do I help them? How do we have fun together? And then I'm always thinking about my two engines here that are just going full speed, this software company that's solving the problem we're talking about. I've got this JPTD thing that when they grow and want to take chips off the table, so I'm thinking, what am I doing today to optimize those two things? That's my highest and best use. When you break it down that way, it's pretty simple. It's not easy. We all have challenges, right? But when I think we coach advisors like you do, what I'm trying to get at, and I used to coach a lot of advisors for years and years, it's what's your Venn diagram? And then what are you doing to yourself in the middle? And what are you doing today? I'm talking the next hour. Optimize your contribution to one of those three. And that kind of gets us to the end game, which is, okay, what are we both seeing out there that your audience should know about? Where would you like to go with that?
Okay, so first of all, I want to share something with you. I had a mentor a long time ago who planted a seed for me. He said, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Okay. And he actually used the glass of water. Said, you see this glass of water? He goes, I fill that up and leave it here. If I come back in a week, it won't be full. It evaporates. Right? So you got to top it up. But that's as big as it gets. When you keep topping yourself up, there's no limitation. Now, granted, I'm getting up there and the evaporation, I'm just trying to keep up with the decline now physically. But the evaporation, but you can keep topping it up. And that, I think, as a metaphor is pretty profound in terms of contributing to your inner circle, your team, your family, all of that. I just love that metaphor. I think about it all the time.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. Yeah. And by the way, Peter, I'm going to talk to Tyler. I think we should do a master class on referrals. Maybe a 3-step progression on why, who, how. Because as I get to know you guys better, I know Refer Me IQ, and I even talk about it in our AI white paper. I get it. But I'm understanding that's actually an element of reluctance. If the how is taken care of, it actually liberates someone to go deeper into the why and the who. So I think we should definitely schedule that. Okay. And the fact that enterprise value is contributed to the depersonalizing of the business. If I'm the lead advisor and the business is growing without me always being present, the business is productive without me being there all the time. There's automated procedures in place that are scalable. That contributes to enterprise value. So I definitely want to get on that. But let's get into this because we could spend hours just on this. This is your wheelhouse. Let's talk about the concept of working on the business and how that contributes to enterprise value. And let's also talk about the scenarios, the various ways to approach the end game. Because that's evolved too, not just in terms of what the value of the business is, but how you can de-risk and take some chips off the table and approach it maybe not abruptly, maybe sequentially. I'll turn it back over to you and you can get into that.
Yeah, and stop me if you want to go more deep on anything, but a couple rules of the road. So biggest mistake we see advisors making is that they wait too long to ask the question, what do I want to do with my business? And when do I want to do it? And exploring exits, succession, legacy planning. And because traditionally what most people, because they see it through the lens, Duncan, of their clients, right? A lot of their clients build, wait. And then when they perceive that they're a couple, 3 years away from retirement, they start having the conversation. There's so many problems with that, not the least of which is the certainty of uncertainty. I'll give you 2 quick stories. We had one client, we had one really big deal fall through a few years back between me and one of my partners because the principal involved died and as much as we encouraged them to put the lifeboat drills documentation in place, while we're talking to them, they didn't do it. And this was a huge blow to the family empire. And that can happen. We don't think it's going to happen. The guy was in good health. We had another one died during COVID. We had one recently where a very large deal fell through because the owner of the business came down with stage 4 cancer. And the private equity firm and therefore turned it over to his daughter to run the company. And she wasn't capable of doing that. And as a result, the PE firm pulled out because they said, we'd rather wait till she runs it in the ground and buy it on pennies on the dollar. So there's so much, we all understand the certainty of uncertainty that things can happen. But what a lot of people don't realize, they really do happen. And all sorts of things can happen. And more importantly, it's like the real estate market with the certain windows that are natural times that if you're blessed, the time you want to sell your home matches with the real estate market being really strong. And that is where we're at right now. We're in a period of time where timing wise, even if you're in your 40s and you've got 20 years left, I would encourage people to have a conversation with us or people like us to explore what the options are, because the old world, and here's the cycle. So at some point you start to realize, let's call it, you're in your 40s. You're growing like a banshee. You think you can probably scale. You're not thinking about retiring for 10, 20 years. And unless they heard one of us speak on something like this, they probably wouldn't even think about an exit or taking chips off the table. Then they come to one of our workshops and we say things like, you're your own worst client, Duncan. And they say, what do you mean? If I asked you what your net worth was, and let's say it's worth 10 million, and if I said, what's your practice worth? And maybe you say it's worth 8 million. So 80% of your net worth is tied up in one asset class. If your client came to you and said, I've got 80% of my net worth tied up in IBM, and I just own one more thing for the other 2 million, what would you say? That's where you are. And there's a whole lot of things that could happen that can make your 8 million worth 3 million. What are you doing about that? And they are mystified, right? That starts the conversation. And then you say, how long have you been in this business? They say 20 years. That's great. You've accomplished a lot. Congratulations. But right now, if you had a home that was worth twice that you think it's worth, and you're an empty nester now, so you don't use all 10 rooms, right? Would you sell a room if you could? Would you sell 3 rooms if you could? Would you sell 5 rooms if you could? Say, heck yeah, I would have done that. That's where we're at. And it's exactly where we are at in this window because of the natural evolution of M&A, but also the entry of probably 5 years ago of private equity into this picture, backing these firms. And now they've got the capacity to grow faster and play Pac-Man and grow through acquisitions. So the ante in the game is, I don't care where you're at, but once you've built something substantial enough, $1 million to $2 million a rev is the range when you should be starting to poke your head up. Almost no matter where you're at, have a conversation, because today, to go through the gamut, there's all sorts of shapes and sizes of strategic partnerships, all sorts of deals. Traditionally, the only deal that existed was sell and leave. So for years and years, up until probably 5 to 8 ago, the only real deals out there is if you were an Ameriprise advisor, an LPL advisor, an RIA, your best deal was going down the street, trying to figure out fit and synergies, but you really wanted somebody to pay you 2 to 3 times your rev. They go out to IVO Bank and get a loan and 10-year note, and you would maybe transition over a year to 2 years, and you had to leave. And if you wanted to practice more, didn't really work. Today, there's sell and leave, there's sell and stay, there's minority, there's majority, there's full deals. With now, not just a couple firms that would do it, we represent 85 of what we think at a point in time is the best of the best in every shape and size. And the way we entered the market was saying, we don't want to be like everybody else. We don't want to be like all the buy side professionals out there, investment bankers, brokers. We want to represent the little guy. We want to represent the people that we love, that we were one of, and that we have helped train thousands of them, put systems in place to help them build these practices. So we said, let's be Jerry Maguire. Let's be the group that represents the athlete, not the sports team we're going to match them with, but let's have a full menu of sports teams, every type of culture, values, etc. But what people need to know is that they should start early having the conversation with us. It may not be right. We may tell them you're not ready. Go back to Duncan, have him work on these things with you, and that's okay. Or if they're not working with Duncan, you should work with Duncan and his crew to do it. We do that. But for the ones that are ready, let's go out and test the market to see if we can get you most, if not all, of what you want. Lastly, the big myth is the younger people have this myth. I want to sell just a little bit, save my power, because I want to have all these rewards of growth. And we've got this proprietary tool that we're happy to take people through that, and we call it, should I stay or should I go? Sometimes we play the song in the background, right? And it's an analysis of, if you stayed and grew by this amount, here's the aggregate wealth you would build over, say, 10 plus years. Or if you do a minority deal, this is what that would look like. And if you did a full deal, this is what it would look like. What they don't understand yet until they talk to us is that because valuations are so strong and because these firms have built growth engines, most of these firms that they would hook their wagon to is the very last strategic partner and firm they'll ever work with. So it's got to be right. And man, we go through painstaking to coach people to make sure they're evaluating things right. The problem is, of course, that if you're a Joe advisor or Jane advisor, you're looking at a universe of all these firms. You don't know who to talk to. You don't know who are the best fit. You don't know what deal structure is best for what you want. But we see it all. And we're agnostic to whatever deal or firm that they work with. It's whatever is the best values fit, cultural fit, and deal structure for where they're at and what they want. But the myth is that I can do better just doing this on my own. We do these spreadsheets, Duncan, and it's very hard to win doing it on your own compared to the current set of deals, because A, you're going to get a ton of money up front that you don't have that will give you velocity of cash and time value of that. And so to get $10 today at cap gains, for example, is much better than getting $1 a year at ordinary income for 10 years. So that's factor one. So you've got to be able to earn that equation. Second is that you will get paid along the way. You don't get bought out and not get paid, and you get paid enough to pay your bills. But third, there's going to be growth incentives built in, lots of them. And then fourth, there's going to be the mother lode of attractiveness of currency that people don't get, and that's equity. And this is the last thing I'll say, and then you can ask that. And the equity piece, people underestimate. If you look at the attractiveness of different kind of currency, and you ask an advisor, what they'll tell you the most attractive currency is income. They'll say, I want to make more and more and more and save more and more and more. Two problems. One is they can make more and more and more, but they don't save more and more and more because like most of the people that raise their lifestyle. So that gap doesn't happen. Second problem is that is the least attractive currency. It's all ordinary income. It's all uncertain. You have to earn it every year, and there's lots of certainty of uncertainty. The most valuable currency of upfront cash, ongoing income, and equity is going to be the equity. They don't know it yet. We show it to them. Why? Because of the arbitrage that these companies are doing. Right. These companies, let's say it's company A buying out a practice. In this practice, somebody might be growing at 5-10% per year, and maybe they get bought out at, say, 10 to 12 times EBITDA. To say that there's a calculation. This firm is growing at 50 to 100% a year, and a company taking a bite of their apple is going to do it at 15 to 20 times EBITDA. So the win-win here is this company buys this company. They have an arbitrage between the difference that they win This firm wins because they swap their low attractiveness equity for very high attractiveness equity. And then when a company takes their bite, so if a deal is, say, a $20 million deal as a sale for a practice, in some cases, they'll get 20 million on top of that just in equity over 10 years from 2 to 3 exits this firm will do. So what we do is basically, one, help them find the right partner. So we'll narrow down for our clients, as you know, maybe 5 firms to start to date. We'll get them three to 5 offers, and we will coach them every step of the way how to get to the finish line so their stock price keeps going up in a very transparent world on both sides. So they'll be educated. So we basically transfer our IP of 100 years of experience to them. So that's the landscape of what we're seeing. And the timing of this, we have a window right now that is closing because of supply and demand. The average age when I was hired as a financial advisor in 1984 was 26. Now it's 62, with a third of the industry retiring in the next 3 years. So as all these businesses come to market and hear about this world, and more of them are because of good work from you and us and people like us, and all this money chasing it, there's going to be way more businesses wanting to do deals than cash available to do it. And private equity is a very ADD group of people. They go into an industry, exploit it, and then they move on. And all this assumes we'll continue to have a bull market like we've had for 13 years, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. And we know that there's probably more uncertainty given the 22 earnings right now in the market. So there's probably higher uncertainty. So we see a window right now. Again, we highly encourage people, have a conversation. Let us talk to you, see if you're ready. If not, put them in the hands of people like Duncan to become ready. And then let's talk you through what's going on out there.
Again, you can tell by the depth from experience and discernment. There's a lot here. We're scratching the surface. So first of all, I got to come back to what you were saying about the 80% of the net worth tied up in the business. The concentration risk there is huge. And then that also happens on the other side where there's not an equity participation. And it's, especially if it's all delayed gratification, who knows, it's potentially watching your ice cream melt over the next 10 years. If you can have the best of all worlds and number one as an outcome, but then also engaging JPTD ensures there are no blind spots. And there are so many considerations here. And then just making sure you're in the driver's seat where you're not pressing, you're actually in control of your outcome. Again, I always use the analogy of staging the business. I mean, business is tidy, optimized, proprietary, scalable, all of these impact. What are some of the biggest home runs in terms of multiples you've seen? Ted's told me a couple that are just bewildering. Have you seen
Folks don't believe us. And so what we tell them, and I'll answer that, but go to the website and there's 2 tabs up there. One is case studies,
right,
and one is offers. And you can see these are real offers, real deals we've closed. And you can see all shapes and sizes. And again, it depends upon size and scope and whether it's minority or majority. But we're seeing for, let's say, a 2 million rev shop, 2 to 5, somewhere in there, we're seeing EBITDA of 10 to 15 times. We're seeing rev of 6 to 8.5. We've never seen this. And what's happening, these firms are committed to acquiring the right people. And they love us because we coach our people through every phase so that we close 95% of the deals that we get LOIs for our clients for, because we know how to navigate the art and the science on both sides to bring 2 people together to come up with a win-win-win for clients deal. But again, when we show people what exists right now, and we are creating a market, Duncan, as I think, because what we do, we deliver such quality people to these firms when we refer them to them. And because they have us coaching them along the way, their life becomes infinitely easier, these buy-side companies, because they know they work with one of our clients, the chance of a deal is very high. So we pre-negotiate deals for our clients. I'll give you 2 examples. So we just closed 2 deals for a minority company, a minority interest company that had an allocation of founders' equity, which is super valuable, right? They weren't going to give founders equity to anybody. We convinced them, I convinced them to give it to our 2 clients, and they basically only gave founders equity to JPTD clients. So that's because of our influence and our contribution. We've got a great partnership with this company, and they're amazing to work with. And if I said their name, I'd have to say all the other names, so I won't, but they're a great partner. So if somebody's hearing that, you may even know who that is. So that's one example. Another example, we have a firm that has read the tea leaves to us that they're going to have a monetization event this year. And they said to us, for your clients, we're going to give them last year's stock price if they sign an LOI through June, which is still plenty of time for people on this podcast to get in. So they're going to get basically an automatic 20% bump in their equity value that they could even liquidate some of that this year. That's added value to the already great deals that they do. They're only doing that with our clients. And we basically, these partners come to us, Duncan, and say, they present the offers to us first and say, do you think this will fly? And we, more often than not, say, no, it's not. And we can even show them, here's an offer down the street in company B. They're at an 8 times rev. You're at a 6 times rev. Take your swings where you want to, but you're not going to win this one at that. You need to come up to 8. And so that's what we do to create a higher market value for our clients than what they would get by going alone. But absent that, the biggest problem advisors have is they have companies solicit them. So they're going about their day doing the thing. They get an email from ABC company. We'd like to talk to you about buying your practice. It's flattering, right? It's intriguing. There's some mystery to it. So they take the call and they get excited and they work with this company. Maybe they do that times 1 to 3 companies. What they don't know is that's only 3 out of 100, right? They could be absolutely wrong. One might be an integrator and they don't know that they're going to have to rebrand, switch everything over to their platform. For some people, that's great. They want to get all that off their plate, but they don't know what's a good fit and what's not. The biggest mistake is not the deal valuation. Biggest mistake is picking the wrong firm that isn't a good cultural values fit. And that's so important. And that's why this is like, don't do this at home or don't try this at home. Don't do this alone if you're an advisor. You can't possibly know not only what any one of us partners of the 4 know, but together we've got 100 years of experience. We've all been deep in M&A for the last 20 years, each on top of what we knew before. On both the buy and the sell side, we know both your economics. We know how to create that win. More importantly, we want to save you the biggest mistake of your life because you don't do this for a living.
Makes sense. Okay, so crystal ball, how long does the window stay open?
I think the window is going to be open for probably 3 to 5 years. But I think that the current environment is as close to nirvana as we've ever seen. And the valuations are by far the best we've ever seen. And I think this year, if we look back, if I had that crystal ball and we don't, but if I had to make a bet, I would say that 2025 will be the year to do a deal. Even if it's taking some chips off the table,
Fair.
hooking your wagon to a company that can get things off your plate and free up your time and make life easier for you to spend more time with your family, this is the year to do a deal.
Okay, I love it. All right, so where do you go from here, everybody? jptdpartners.com/Pareto to get some resources. What is your business worth? That score exercise, just a couple minutes to know where you stand. And if you want to go even further, then activate to get a free consultation just so you can just get a lay of the land a little bit clearer. Mm-hmm. And then you can go from there. We have to do a masterclass in referrals, and I think we should also do a mastermind on Endgame preparation and do a deep dive modularly. I'll talk to you about that a little bit later on. But any closing comments? I appreciate you being here. You covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, no, I loved it. Thanks for your insights. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Don't forget to go to referrmeiq.com as well. Check out that quiz under the Resource Center. Take it, see what you think, see how you come out. Anything I can do to help you. And feel free, I would just add to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. It's Peter S. Velardi. My son has the same name. He has an A in the middle. He'll look a lot better than me. Go to Peter S. Velardi in LinkedIn, and happy to connect. And if I could be a resource to anybody in the podcast, I'm happy to be that. But thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, right back at you. Great job. And we'll talk soon, and we'll map out next steps when we can connect next.
Beautiful.
Okay. Take it easy.
You bet. You too.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit ParetoSystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests, and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.